Popolo della Ridda, in attesa del prossimo nuovo video sconvolgente sul Cerbero Podcast alle prese con l'Islam, pubblico qui per voi la collection definitiva sulla questione che riguarda Aisha, la piccola Aisha, moglie di Maometto. Qui in questo video c'è tutto quello che vi serve per confutare le balle apologetiche della Dawah. Nelle prime due parti vedrete Colin di Islam Critiqued, mentre nella terza vedrete David Wood insieme a Shamoun. Vi lascio poi un mio regalino personale, ovvero alcuni hadith della raccolta di Annasai sulla vicenda di Aisha, e vi faccio notare questo commento qui. Non so se l'abbia fatto proprio Annasai o qualche studioso che ha voluto commentare questa raccolta. Non ho trovato l'autore di questo commento. Ad ogni modo, il commento che qui leggete si scaglia contro tutti quelli che cercano di negare la verità sul fatto che Aisha avesse 6 anni quando sposò Maometto e 9 anni quando consumò il matrimonio con Maometto. Ad ogni modo vi lascio al video, vi saluto tutti, alla prossima, iscrivetevi, grazie, ciao!
In Sahih al-Bukhari 5080, when Muhammad found out one of his companions married an older woman, he asked, "Why don't you have a liking for the virgins and for fondling them?" Allah's Messenger also said, "Why didn't you marry a young girl so that you might play with her and she with you?" What did Muhammad mean when he referred to marrying and playing with young girls? I'll let you decide as we go through the first video in this series on women in Islamic ideology. In Sahih al-Bukhari 6079, rarely did the Prophet fail to visit Abu Bakr's house in the morning and in the evening. And in 3905, Abu Bakr also prepared to leave for Medina, but Allah's Messenger said to him, "Wait for a while, because I hope that I will be allowed to migrate also." Abu Bakr and Muhammad were close friends, and Muhammad's pleading to Abu Bakr to delay his immigration as well as Muhammad's daily visits to Abu Bakr's house were no doubt in some way religiously motivated. Initially, Muhammad had only a few followers in Mecca, and they were a tightly knit group. But there seems to be another reason for Muhammad's closeness to Abu Bakr. He had a very young daughter. Muhammad married Aisha, Abu Bakr's daughter, when she was 6 years old. He consummated the marriage with her when she was 9. This is unanimous throughout the most reliable sources of Islamic history. In Sahih al-Bukhari 5133, narrated Aisha that the Prophet married her when she was 6 years old, and he consummated his marriage when she was 9 years old. In Sahih Muslim 3311, she was taken to Muhammad's house from a swing set in Sunan Abu Dawud 4915 as a bride when she was 9 and her dolls were with her. Sunan Abu Dawud 2116 narrated Aisha, the Messenger of Allah married me when I was 7 years old. The narrator adds, or 6 years, he had intercourse with me when I was 9 years old. In spite of one recorded objection by Abu Bakr that he and Muhammad were brothers in religion, Muhammad proceeded with his marriage to 6-year-old Aisha, the son of his best friend, and consummated the marriage when she was 9. It is one of the best attested facts of Muhammad's career. I'll pause at this point to address a defense that Muslim apologists typically offer to defend Muhammad's morality. Youths in that day and time matured quickly. I'll refer to this as the theory of accelerated maturity. This seems ad hoc for a number of reasons, but even if it were true, it would be true in general, and there could be exceptions. But in the case of Aisha, any theory of accelerated maturity is defeated in the Sahih. There is even more evidence of her tender age, aside from the swing sets and dolls described earlier. Aisha is also portrayed as a young girl who is inattentive and sleeps a lot in Bukhari 2637. In a parallel narration in Bukhari 2661, Aisha is a girl of immature age. Both of these narrations took place after she was married to Muhammad. A girl who is young, inattentive, sleeps a lot, is of immature age, and plays on swings with dolls doesn't sound like the best candidate for the theory of accelerated maturity. Further, sexual intercourse with young girls is also confirmed in the Quran. On the waiting times for divorce, Surah 65:4 states, "And those who no longer expect menstruation among your women, if you doubt, then their period is 3 months, and also for those who have not menstruated." The last phrase, "those who have not yet menstruated," requires some elucidation. Surah 65:4 is discussing waiting times for divorce. The purpose of this waiting period is to ensure that the women are not pregnant before the divorce is finalized. And so what it's saying is, those who no longer expect menstruation among your women, if you doubt, then their waiting time for their divorce period is 3 months. More on this from Tafsir ibn Abbas. O Messenger of Allah, what about the waiting period of those who do not have menstruation because they are too young? And Tafsir ibn Kathir, the same for the young who have not reached the years of menstruation. Their iddah is 3 months, like those in menopause. Now, all we've established so far is that marrying and subsequently divorcing prepubescent girls after a waiting period is authorized in the Quran in Surah 65. Now, this next part is extremely important. In Surah 33:49 it says, "When you marry believing women and then divorce them before you have touched them, then there is not for you any waiting period to count concerning them." So if you haven't slept with a woman, then there's no need to have a waiting period because you know that she's not pregnant. To summarize between these two ayat, waiting periods only apply in cases where sexual intercourse occurred. Waiting periods for divorce apply to prepubescent girls. Therefore, according to the Quran, sexual intercourse is allowed with prepubescent girls. Thus, the renowned 20th century Islamic scholar Sayyid Maududi is completely in accord with Islamic law when he summarizes, therefore making mention of the waiting period for the girls who have not yet menstruated clearly proves that it is not only permissible to give away the girl in marriage at this age, but it is also permissible for the husband to consummate the marriage with her. Now, obviously, no Muslim has the right to forbid a thing which the Quran has held as permissible. Given all this, Muhammad's saying cited at the beginning of this video is now given sufficient context for exegesis. Why don't you have a liking for the virgins and for fondling them? Why didn't you marry a young girl so that you might play with her and she with you? Sexual intercourse with prepubescent girls is clearly sanctioned by the Quran and Muhammad, called an excellent example for mankind. But this isn't just an abstract academic exercise. As a result of this ideology, young girls around the world have suffered extensively for many centuries, and they still do. If you think the content in part 1 of this series was repulsive, unfortunately, we're just getting started. This video was motivated by a recent exchange I had with a Muslim over his interpretation of Surah 65:4. I'll put a link to that exchange in a pinned comment so that you can read up on it if you like. But throughout this exchange with this individual, I kept wondering how other Muslims interpret Surah 65:4. I mean, the things around Muhammad and Aisha, those whole circumstances are pretty well known, but Surah 65:4 is less talked about. And so in this video, we're going to review some of the material regarding Muhammad and Aisha and the Sahih, and then we're going to move to Surah 65:4 and what some of the tafsirs say about it. And then at the end of this video, I'll have some questions that I would like Muslims to answer if they're willing to do so, because I want to see how you interpret 65:4. So we'll start with defining our terms here, and we're going to define these terms because it's at this point that Muslims like to equivocate, and the purpose of this equivocation, as it was with the individual I was having the discussion with, is to make it appear as though the girls in Surah 65:4 are not actually prepubescent. And if you sort of equivocate on the definition of prepubescent, then you can have your own custom definition that evades the criticism that Surah 65:4 is addressing prepubescent girls. However, there is an objective definition of prepubescent, and it comes right from Sahih al-Bukhari. So when we look at Bukhari 352, chapter 18, we see that the attaining of puberty and start of menses are used synonymously. Now, if you know how Bukhari works on sunnah.com, you'll see that there are chapters, and at the beginning of these chapters will be introductions in Arabic, and they're often not translated to English. However, in my hard copy, they are translated, and so I have an image to show you what that translation looks like. Once again, this is volume 3, book 52. The attaining of puberty by women is with the start of menses. Okay, so there's your definition right from Sahih al-Bukhari, which is the context that we're going to look at for several hadith here. Now, you'll notice that I have links next to each hadith, and this is for easy reference for you and to make the video flow faster. So I'm not going to stop and cite the source for each one of these, but I'm going to copy paste all of this information into a pinned comment so you can very easily check these sources for yourself. All right, regarding Muhammad and Aisha, of course, he married her when she was 6 years old, and he consummated his marriage when she was 9 years old. This is documented in numerous hadith that are rated Sahih. From Sahih Muslim 1422c, She was taken to his house as a bride when she was 9 and her dolls were with her. Now this is significant because according to Bukhari 6130, which also quotes the commentary on Bukhari, it was allowed for Aisha at the time, that is playing with dolls, as she was a little girl, not yet reached the age of puberty. So in addition to her being described as a little girl at the age of 9 who came from a swing set, incidentally, according to other ahadith, she had her dolls with her, and this was allowed because she was prepubescent, and that's when she went to Muhammad's house for intercourse. Now this brings us to Dawood 4931, because sometimes Muhammad would stay there with Aisha and her friends as they would play with dolls, and sometimes something else would happen. This is rather disturbing. I used to play with dolls. Sometimes the Messenger of Allah entered upon me when the girls were with me. When he came in, they went out. And when he went out, they came in. So sometimes when Muhammad would approach Aisha and her friends with dolls, they would all leave, and then it would just be her and Muhammad alone. And when Muhammad would leave, then her friends would come back. This is really disturbing stuff. Now we have a couple of parallel narrations here in Bukhari. These narrations describe Aisha as a little girl who has not yet reached puberty, and she's being screened while she's at this festival watching some Ethiopians. That's Bukhari 5236 and 5190. Now, I have a note at the end of 5190, right after Aisha says, "You may estimate of what age a little girl may listen to amusement." And again, she's described in 5236 as not yet reaching the age of puberty. And in Dr. Muhammad Khan's translation, he has a footnote right at the bottom of 5190 in Bukhari, and I'll put that up on the screen, that says, "Aisha was 15 years old then." And once again, because Muslims love to avoid this stuff, I'll put it on the screen for you. Now, Aisha is further described numerous times in the Hadith as being a young girl of immature age. There's another example there from Bukhari, and a link if you want to check that out. Now, let's move into Surah 65:4, because what Surah 65:4 says, "If you are in doubt about those of your women who have despaired of menstruation, you should know that their waiting period is 3 months, and the same applies to those who have not menstruated as yet." So what this is describing is there's a waiting period prior to divorce, and this is to prevent a woman from getting pregnant and not knowing who the father is. Basically, if she gets divorced and she's pregnant, but it's in the early stages of pregnancy, nobody knows it, she gets remarried again, has intercourse, consummates the marriage, and then she's pregnant, well, who's the father? And so there's a waiting period prior to divorce that's enforced to prevent this issue. Surah 33:49 says, "O believers, if you marry believing women and divorce them before the marriage is consummated, you are not required to observe the waiting period." So the waiting period is only if the marriage is consummated. Obviously, if it was not consummated, then the woman's not going to be pregnant, so you don't need to observe the waiting period. Now, according to Kathir's tafsir, this is a command on which the scholars are agreed, that if a woman is divorced before the marriage is consummated, she does not have to observe the waiting period. So why is all this significant? Well, it's significant because Surah 65:4 prescribes a waiting period for girls who have not menstruated. Why is a waiting period required? It's required because the marriage was consummated, which means that you can consummate a marriage with a prepubescent girl according to Surah 65:4. Now, Maududi triumphantly proclaims this. Therefore, making mention of the waiting period for the girls who have not yet menstruated clearly proves that it is not only permissible to give away the girl in marriage at this age, and what is that age? Well, it's the age of prepubescence, the age before menstruation. But it is also permissible for the husband to consummate the marriage with her. Now, Maududi anticipates the shock of his audience as he quickly adds, "Now, obviously, no Muslim has the right to forbid a thing which the Quran has held as permissible." And so Maududi lets the Quran interpret itself. A waiting period is required for girls who have not yet had their periods. A waiting period is required because a marriage is consummated. Therefore, you are allowed to consummate your marriage with a girl who has not yet reached puberty. This is the background of Surah 65:4 according to numerous tafsir. Let's look at a couple. From Jalalain, those who have not yet menstruated because of their young age. Again, those who are too young. And again, what about the waiting period of those who do not have menstruation because they are too young? And again, from Kathir, who have not reached the years of menstruation. Let's go back into the modern era with Sayyid Qutb. In this surah, the waiting period of a divorced woman or who is too young to have a period is specified. So you see this common thread, too young, too young, too young, too young to have a period. And there is a waiting period prescribed to them because you're allowed to consummate the marriage with these girls who have not yet reached the age of puberty. So with this in mind, I have a couple of questions for Muslims. Do you affirm or deny that a waiting period is required for divorce only if the marriage has been consummated in accordance with Surah 3349? Do you accept or reject the numerous tafsirs cited in this video which explicitly state that Surah 65:4 was revealed in part to address waiting periods for girls too young to menstruate? Moving from the tafsir to the Quran, do you affirm or deny that a waiting period is required in the Quran for girls too young to menstruate? Do you acknowledge the Quran makes provision for marriage, consummation, and divorce of prepubescent girls? If your own interpretation differs from what you've seen in this video, what is your textual basis for it? So Muslims, I'd like to see your answers to these questions. I'll be watching the comment section to see what you have to say. Thanks for watching.
This is sauce.
Daif, brother, Daif.
Hey, here's another example of exactly what we're talking about right now, where Muhammad's own modern followers will call the Muslim scholars, the Muslim historians, the biggest bunch of liars the world has ever seen. So this is Dale Lee, Sam's favorite. The life of the messenger of God. What is that anyway?
Is he Sirat Rasulullah Ibn Ishaq? That's the only one.
Yeah, but this isn't an Ibn Ishaq.
So
the life of the messenger of God records that Aisha accepted Islam shortly after it was revealed, 12 years before her marriage. And there is no way she could have done so as an infant or toddler. Dale, please give us a clear reference page number. No offense, but we tend not to trust what you guys say in the chat.
Especially him. He's a notorious
especially
liar and a
you.
deceiver.
You're a chronic liar.
You've been humiliated over and over again. Now, CP.
Wait. I got some references here.
Yeah, but I want CP to address this as well as you come up with the references. CP. According to this man, Aisha accepted Islam 12 years before the marriage. That means Aisha could not be 6 when Muhammad asked Abu Bakr to marry her, and 9 when he slept with her. This is what this Muslim just said, and he goes, it's in Sirat Rasulullah.
Yeah.
He said Sirat Rasulullah.
In the meantime, while we're waiting for the actual reference, let's look at a couple of passages here, ladies and gentlemen. I'll go through these quickly because we don't want to spend too much time on this, but let's go through some passages here. This is Sahih al-Bukhari, number 5133, narrated Aisha that the Prophet wrote the marriage contract with her when she was 6 years old, and he consummated his marriage when she was 9 years old, and then she remained with him for 9 years. And by the way, look at the chapter heading. The chapter heading is giving one's young children in marriage is permissible. And then he quotes the Quran, Surah 65, verse 4, to justify the marriage. And notice he specifically says, and the iddah for the girl before puberty is 3 months. So he quotes the Quran, which justifies marriage to prepubescent girls, and then gives Aisha as an example. Sahih al-Bukhari 5133. Again, let's read a couple of these real quick. Sahih al-Bukhari 5134, narrated Aisha that the Prophet wrote the marriage contract with her when she was 6 years old, and he consummated his marriage when she was 9 years old. That's that one. Next one.
We should go to Ibn Kathir.
I can. Well, if you want to pull up Ibn Kathir, we've got all day long. 51. Let me just read this one, and then I've got all of them. I got Sahih Muslim, Sunan Abu Dawud. I got them all pulled up. 51. I'm so used to people like Dale Lee lying on here that you just kind of have to have these things ready. 5158. Sahih al-Bukhari, narrated Urwa. The Prophet wrote the marriage contract with Aisha while she was 6 years old and consummated his marriage with her while she was 9 years old, and she remained with him for 9 years, i.e., until his death. Notice. You have Aisha narrating some of these passages. Dale Lee calls Aisha, the mother of the faithful, a liar.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing. He said life of Muhammad, right? Well, I'm going to give him Ibn Kathir. This doesn't come from his tafsir. It comes from his Al-Sira al-Nabawiyya. Al-Sira al-Nabawiyya, translated in English, The Life of the Prophet Muhammad by Trevor Lagassick. Everyone pronounce his name. You can get it in English. It's in 4 volumes. This comes from Volume 2, English translation of Al-Sira al-Nabawiyya, pages 93-94. Ibn Kathir, who had read all the sources before him, because, guys, I want you to remember this. Ibn Kathir is coming about 700 years after the death of Muhammad. He's read all these sources. He's read Bukhari. He's read Muslim. He's read Nasai. He's read Ibn Majah. He's read Ibn Hisham. He's read it all. He's a scholar. And he's one of the students of Ibn Taymiyyah. After examining all these sources, let me show you what Ibn Kathir says, who knows Arabic. This is what he says. His statement, he contract married with Aisha when she was 6. Thereafter consummating marriage with her when she was 9, is not disputed by anyone. Let me repeat it 2 more times. Is not disputed by anyone.
Not by anyone?
Is not disputed by anyone.
It's disputed by a bunch of people?
Is not disputed by anyone.
Dale Lee's disputing it.
Is not, but he's not anyone. He's nobody.
Talking about the scholars, right?
And he's talking about, yeah. And then it says, and is well established in the Sahih collections of tradition elsewhere, which you just quoted several. CP, what do you got to say to this guy?
I just want to add, Ibn Kathir, he knew the sources far better than pretty much anyone before or after him, right? I mean, there are only a few people who are in that category, but he would have known all of the Sirah works, all of the Hadith collections. He knew all of these, and he said it's not disputed by anyone.
In fact, you cannot translate the Quran in English without consulting Ibn Kathir's tafsir first. The commentators that people consult to properly translate the Quran in English, Tabari, Qurtubi, Ibn Kathir, the 2 Jalals, Baidawi, Zamakhshari. You cannot translate the Quran in English and have it accepted by Muslims if you haven't consulted these sources. And many Muslims say one of the greatest, if not the greatest, commentator is Ibn Kathir. CP, what do you got to say?
You know, if we quote for this guy from the same book he just quote for us to prove the age of Aisha to be not what we are saying, and it is very embarrassing for Muhammad, he will call the book of Sirah a book of sauce in a second. I send you a link, David. This is the Imams, they making fatwa by agreement, refuting the lies. This is the name of the title in the side. It says, refutation of the lie about the Prophet wife Aisha and her age. So, because many Muslims, they claim that Aisha, she was 18. And this is a refutation by the Imams of the Muslims. Islam question and answer website, and they are saying whoever say that Aisha, she was 18 years old when the Prophet did marry her, he is quoting from the book of sauce.
You got it. It's game over for you, CP. This daily retired you. You need to go find a job now, okay?
Yeah.
No, we do have a follow-up from Dale Lee. He said the earliest surviving biography of Muhammad, and he's quoting Ibn Ishaq's Surat Rasulullah. So give us the page number. We want to read this. And this is just amazing, by the way, Sam. Whenever I quote Ibn Ishaq, Muslims say no. Muslims say no, you can't trust that.
I have it.
Let's go.
He just said Life of Muhammad, right?
Yep.
Folks, right here. Alfred Guillaume's English translation of Sirat Rasulullah, The Life of Muhammad, page 792. He married Aisha in Mecca when she was a child of 7 and lived with her in Mecca when she was 9 or 10. She was the only virgin that he married. Her father, Abu Bakr, married her to him, and the apostle gave her 400 dirhams. He married Aisha in Mecca when she was a child of 7. And when did she live with him in Medina? When she was 9 or 10. So why was she living with him? To play patty cake? Patty cake, patty cake with Allah and his messenger.
And that's guys, think about the logic here, right?
Liar,
think about the logic here, right? When I quote Ibn Ishaq, because of the battles and so on, all the horrible information and the satanic verses, when I quote Ibn Ishaq, Muslims say, no, you can't quote Ibn Ishaq. That's Sirah. We don't trust Sirah anymore. We only trust the main collections of hadiths. We only trust Bukhari and Muslim and so on. So notice right here, we're quoting Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Sunan Abu Dawud. These are the sources that say that Muhammad had sex with Aisha when she was 9 years old. And what's the response? No, you can't go to those sources. Those are all lies. What you need to do is go to the Sirah. You have to go to Ibn Ishaq. And that's what Dale Lee says. Go to Ibn Ishaq. And Sam quotes Ibn Ishaq. And what's it say? It says she was 9 years old. Wow. This is Islamic apologetics. Yep. Hey, I had a quick one real quick, and then we can move on. But this is